Today, we're going to talk about Porto, Portugal. This charmingly radiant and overcrowded city is just the right place for all the tourists, explorers, photographers, and backpackers, making it to the list of one of our favorite cities and nemesis of the most visited city, Lisbon. There's a lot to see, a lot to explore, and a lot to satisfy your palates with just the right proportion of everything, from views to bridges to wine. The city is full of gourmet restaurants, quaint taverns, packed streets, slender buildings, and coruscating cathedral churches. Present on the north bank of the Douros River, the city sprawls outwards from Ribeira, which is an older riverside district. Along with having a dense population, the city's name holds a massive meaning to it, and that's of business and trade. This historic city stores fortified wine in the warehouses. That's usually the part of the afterfeast. Not only that Porto's soil is fertile enough to grow crops and do intense farming in the region, allowing it to produce some cereals, vegetables, and timber. The reason for farming being made possible here is its moist and mild climate. This city is filled with everything that an explorer can feast upon, and to know more about the things you can do in this prismatic city, stick till the end of the video. Here's a list of 5 things you can do in Porto, Portugal. Number 5. Cais da Ribeira. Life at first was bizarre in the city that mainly included fishing throughout the day at the edge of the Bank River, where now the neighborhood of Ribeira resides. As its name suggests as well, it means river in Portuguese. Now there's always the hustle and bustle of tourists, and it's built enough to accommodate restaurants and bears a lot of vibrant streets. On every corner of Ribeira, you will find a bar or a restaurant, so you have plenty of options to explore and try out the local food. And while you're out on the streets of Ribeira, don't carry a map along. Just explore everything on your own and get a fine experience. Its vibrant facade catches the attention of tourists, along with the archaic houses, making shadows in the river water on the edge. As charming as it is in the daytime, the nightlife in the city leaves one awestruck as well. The cellars are usually lit up, and one can sit on the rooftop of any restaurant and can enjoy the view of the city. Number 4. Clérigos Tower. To have a better sight of the entire city of Porto, Clérigos Tower is just the right place to be, and is an important landmark of the city. But for someone claustrophobic, climbing the tower may not be ideal. Clérigo Tower is a bell tower attached to the Clérigo Church, designed by the architect Nasoni. And if you want to know what the city looks like from up there, then you will surely have to do a little more effort, because there isn't going to be any magical elevator that will take you to the top of the tower to get to see that view. Instead of that, you will have to climb 240 stairs to get that ethereal view from the top. And that climb isn't going to be easy, because when that tower was built, it wasn't built keeping in mind that tourists will gather around here someday. So the steps between you and the tower are going to be steep. The top of this bell tower is significant because there's no other spot in the city that gives you a 360-degree view of the entire city. At the foot of the tower, you will find a chilled open-air bar to enjoy a little post-climb drink. Number 3. Port tasting. While you're in Porto, how is it possible that you don't take time out for port tasting? If you don't normally drink in the afternoon, be prepared to do that while you're visiting the port houses, because they usually have a schedule so you can't just stroll around to midnight and expect some port tasting from your favorite brands. There's Gaia on the south of the Douro River, and that is mainly the hub for most of the port houses because of its mild temperature that can store the port in the cellars. And the port there is specifically made in the Douro Valley by using their native Portuguese grapes. You won't get lost because there are plenty of maps spread around Gaia, so it won't be trouble getting into a port house and getting out of one. Since the port is slightly different from the wine, you don't necessarily need a port house to taste that. In fact, you can purchase it from the local bars and liquor stores as well. Some very well recognized port houses are Cockburn, Graham's, Taylor's, and Sandman's. But make sure you try out the brands that you won't easily find back home, so your visit to these port houses could be worth it. But since some port houses offer scheduled visits, you can't just show up to any house at your convenience. Instead, go through the schedule beforehand, so then you don't get annoyed by their rules and regulations. You can also carry plenty of snacks with you, since you'd be drinking in the daytime, and the port is stronger than the wine you may want to have after effects in check. So while you stroll through these port houses, make the most of your time there, and stay hydrated. Number 2, cathedral churches. Port also resides plenty of coruscating cathedral churches that can be a feast for art and architecture lovers. There's a church of São Francisco that's the last Gothic monument in Porto that has Gothic walls and pillars, intricated with cherubs, foliage, and birds. Then, you can roam around and visit the tallest church at the time of the completion of the city. This Baroque church style is very well built, with very mesmerizing carvings, and a clock so high that you can't spot the time if you're just standing underneath it. You have to take a few steps back to figure out the time that it's showing. Then there's Porto Cathedral. That's the most archaic part of the city, and was initially given a defensive role that's very vivid from its structure. So, while you're done cherishing the city's colorful facade, feed your mind with these quaint architectural forms as well. Number 1, Douro River Trip. It's not always a great idea to do sightseeing at overcrowded touristy places, because it gets overwhelming. But to miss out on cruising in the Douro River is not an ideal choice to make, knowing there's plenty of stuff happening just at the edge of the river. And choosing not to get a better sight from the river, is not something you'd want to do. Hop on to any sightseeing boat tour and acknowledge the significance of this river while moving past different landmarks of the city. This river is just the right spot to spend your lazy afternoons, cruising, taking a sunset stroll, or even consuming a nice meal with a view. You'll opt for the same pathway that once the merchants used to transport the port wine to the cellars, taking your way from underneath the very well-known Gustave Eiffel-designed Dom Luis I Bridge. The Ribeira city also gives a very epic view from the river, and to get the most of it, grab a seat on the edge of the boat. Along with these top 5 things, there are also plenty of things that you can do here, including swaying away from the city and visiting the beaches of Porto, finding a perfect spot for sunset, visiting the Portuguese galleries, and appreciating the local art. There's a lot to discover whenever you're at someplace, and it shouldn't always confine to a list in your pocket. Diversify the experiences by letting some stay unknown. So, out of all of these above mentioned things, what will you do first if you came to visit Porto? Let us know in the comment section below. And as always, where to next?